Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jeremy Leffler and I work in the policy office at the National Science Foundation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the Fall 2021 NSF Virtual Grants Conference. I'm now pleased to present this session covering updates to proposal and award policy, and this session will be presented by Gene Feldman, Head of Policy Office in the Division of Institution and Award Support.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to once again provide the NSF proposal and award policy update. Next slide, please. My name's Gene Feldman. I am head of the policy office in the Division of Institution and Award Support in the Office of Budget, Finance, and Award Management. I am currently on detail to NSF's Office of the Director, working with Rebecca Kaiser, NSF's Chief of Research Security, Strategy, and Policy. I will return to the policy office in October, just in time to work on the 2023 draft version of the PAP guide that should go into the Federal Register in the December timeframe. Next slide, please. Well, what are we going to discuss today? Well, we're going to discuss the topic that we always go through, and that's the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide. And I'm going to cover what are some of the significant changes, as well as some very important clarifications that we have made to the PAP guide this year. I'm going to provide a brief update on research.gov, as well as some important reminders on natural disasters, things that unfortunately we are experiencing quite frequently. And we want to make sure you all understand what the policy position is and what you need to do should you experience one of these events. Next slide, please. The Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide implementation. Little different than we have in past years. Typically, a new PAP guide would have gone into effect a few months ago. And this year, we're moving to a different schedule. We posted a draft in the Federal Register in December of 2020. We provided our typical 60-day public comment period, and we posted the PAP guide to the NSF website on June 22nd, 2021. This new PAP guide will be effective for proposals submitted or due on or after October 4th, 2021. So very timely presentation to get you ready for that. And we always provide at least 90 days prior to the effective date. And we're delighted that we actually achieved that this year and then some in terms of helping give you sufficient time to train your faculty, to look at your policies, to look at your electronic systems. Next slide, please. Let's go through what some of those significant changes are. We implemented in this version of the PAP guide 2 CFR 200. I'd like to remind everyone that NSF is a bit different. In fact, very different from our other federal colleagues. We are the only agency approved by the Office of Management and Budget to implement our 2 CFR 200 through use of a policy document. But NSF actually does it in two ways. Not only do we implement it in the PAP guide, but we also implement it in our award terms and conditions. And when 2 CFR 200 was released in August with an implementation date required by OMB in November, we obviously were not able to achieve a PAP guide change in that amount of time because we do go through that public comment process. But we did change all of our terms and conditions in November, and so we did effectively meet the OMB mandate. Another important change that we have made in this version of the PAP guide is that we have added new coverage on requests for reasonable and accessibility accommodations for individuals with disabilities. Now, I will tell you that last piece, individuals with disabilities, is very important because we've had some that have confused it with our policies on natural and anthropogenic event. This piece and this new set of guidance is directly for individuals with disabilities and individuals who need reasonable accommodations as part of the proposal process. We tell you to contact our NSF Office of Equity and Civil Rights, OECR. Many of you are familiar with them as Office of Diversity and Inclusion. They recently have changed their name to Office of Equity and Civil Rights. But you contact that office at least 30 days prior to the proposal deadline date. For individuals who need accessibility accommodations, and these are different. These are issues with accessing the NSF proposal submission and award management systems, our websites, and other digital content. There is another office to contact, and that is our NSF Section 508 compliance officer, and that also has to be done at least 30 days prior to the proposal deadline date. We've also added more contextual language for the proposal sections. Folks, think of faculty in particular, think of the proposal as being maybe the project summary, but definitely the project description. Every single part of the proposal serves a very important and distinct purpose. And so we have added in each of these sections the contextual language to explain what the purpose of the section is, as well as how NSF uses this information as part of the merit review process. We believe having faculty and your PIs understand that will help them write better proposals. Next slide. Policy implementation of the biographical sketch. Before I actually go into what the changes are, I think it's super important for folks to understand what the biographical sketch is there for. The biographical sketch is used to assess how well qualified the individual, team, or organization is to conduct the proposed activities. So quite an important section. All senior personnel, obviously, senior personnel on the proposal, as you're aware, must submit a biographical sketch. There is an important an appointment section, and it has to include any titled academic, professional, or institutional position, whether or not remuneration is received, and whether full-time, part-time, or voluntary, including adjunct, visiting, or honorary. Many faculty in the past have said, hey, I'm not getting any money from this, or it's only part-time, not important enough to mention. That's not the case. That is another way our reviewers and program staff can assess whether the individual has the sufficient qualifications to carry out the research as proposed. Obviously, we ask for synergistic activities. We remind you that they must be specific and may not include multiple examples to describe a single activity. I have included the reference to the PAP guide chapters on this slide, just as a reminder for you in case you want to go back and review that. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to talk about what some of the significant changes and clarifications are to the biographical sketch that we have made for this version of the PAP guide. One of the most important changes that we made is that the biographical sketch has been expanded from 2 pages to 3 pages. And we heard during the comment period from the community that frankly, faculty were complaining that given the information that we are requiring, 2 pages was simply not sufficient to include all the requisite information. We also received the same comment from our Office of the Inspector General. And so we have expanded it to 3 pages. Other biographical sketch clarifications include changing the appointment language regarding professional appointments. And what we have done in this section is that we have modified the language to indicate that senior personnel, and this is specifically related to professional appointments, that senior personnel must identify all current, domestic, and foreign professional appointments outside of the individual's academic, professional, or institutional appointments at the proposing organization. Another important clarification is that we finally have addressed the issue of et al. We have been hearing for many years from faculty and sponsored projects office personnel that many of the publications that folks want to reference in their biographical sketch have many, many, many authors, and that directly impacted their ability to meet the page limitation. So we worked with senior management, and we have changed the language to specify that senior personnel who wish to include publications in the products section of the biographical sketch that include multiple authors may, at their discretion, choose to list one or more of the authors and then et al. In lieu of including the complete listing of authors' names. We recognize that for many years, we told you that you cannot use et al., but we have addressed that issue in this version of the PAP guide. We also are continuing to require use of an NSF approved format, and those formats continue to be the NSF fillable format and Science CV. And revised NSF approved biographical sketch formats are available, and they incorporate all of the changes that we have made in this version of the PAP guide. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk again and do a little bit of level setting on current and pending support. What do we use it for? NSF uses the information for two ways: to assess the capacity of the individual to carry out the research as proposed, as well as to help assess any potential overlap or duplication with the proposal being submitted. The information must be provided for all current and pending support, irrespective of whether such support is provided through the proposing organization or directly to the individual. And we continue to address in-kind contributions. In-kind contributions that are intended for use on the project being proposed must be included in facilities, equipment, and other resources. The reason for that is that it allows our reviewers and NSF program staff to have a complete listing of all of the facilities, equipment, and resources that are available for this project should it be funded. In-kind contributions that are not intended for use on the project being proposed, and you notice it's bolded and underlined, which have an associated time commitment, must be reported in current and pending support. I've also included on this slide the direct PAP guide section. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about the significant changes and clarifications that we've made to current and pending support. We've received a lot of questions on current and pending support, and we've made the questions are about both the policy and technical implementation. And so we have incorporated some additional information in the PAP guide from the frequently asked questions document that's published on the NSF website to assist the community with completing this section of the proposal. We've also added 2 data elements new to this. Objectives and overlap have been added to the NSF approved formats. And what this does is to help reviewers and NSF assess overlap and duplication. We had a lot of information that helped us understand the capacity and whether the individual had sufficient capacity to carry out the project being proposed. But much more limited information on overlap and duplication, and we believe these two new data elements should very much assist in this regard. We've also developed a new table entitled NSF pre-award and post-award disclosures relating to the biographical sketch and current and pending support. Going to talk about that table in a moment, and I'm very excited about how helpful we believe that this new table will be. NSF is now removing blank pages from current and pending support documents. With this PAP guide implementation, we have heard from many of you how irritating it was to your faculty because it expanded the length of the current and pending support section, in some cases to hundreds of pages. So I'm going to talk about that in a moment, about how we're going to implement that. And again, we will have the revised NSF approved formats are available for current and pending support in both the fillable format and in Science CV. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about the table that I briefly just mentioned. It is a new table that we've developed called NSF pre-award and post-award disclosures relating to the biographical sketch and current and pending support. It is dated September 1st, 2021. You will notice on the horizontal axis, we talk about the type of activity, the biographical sketch, the current and pending support, facilities, equipment, and other resources, project reports, post-award term and condition, and disclosure not required. And this table lays out precisely the type of activity on the vertical axis, where you will place it in the proposal or in a post-award requirement responsibility. And we believe that this one document that's 3 pages long will be of great assistance to your faculty and to you in sponsored projects offices in understanding what NSF's expectations are and where we expect you to place this information, either pre or post award. Very exciting for us to be able to provide this to you. And also, I would like to just emphasize that this is based on comments that we have received from you, from the community. That's why it's 3 pages long, because we continued to receive questions on, well, what do I do about X? Do I report this? Do I report that? Do I not have to disclose that? And we want you to continue to use this. And if something is not on here, we are strongly encouraging you to share that with us. policy@nsf.gov, so that we can continue to make sure that this particular table is as useful and as comprehensive as possible. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about what we're calling the blank page trimming functionality that I just mentioned on the current and pending support document. This relates directly only to, again, and I'm going to emphasize this a few times, only to the NSF fillable format. Effective August 30th, the trimming functionality was incorporated into both Fastlane and grants.gov, and it automatically removes any blank pages from the NSF approved format. The trimming functionality will be integrated in research.gov on October 4th for proposals submitted in research.gov and project reports submitted in the research.gov project reporting system. The functionality, as I mentioned, only applies to the NSF approved current and pending support fillable PDF. It doesn't apply to any other uploaded PDFs. Current and pending support PDFs generated in Science CV did not have this issue ever, so it was not an issue with your Science CV submissions. The PDF page numbers will not be updated, however, during this trimming process. in the paginated current and pending support fillable PDF document. So what that means is it's possible for the trim PDF to have skipped page numbers corresponding to the pages that we've removed. We thought about this seriously, but we thought removing these blank pages was more important than having a few page numbers skipped, which will be obvious to the reviewer anyway. So we hope you're as excited about this change as we are. Next slide, please. I'm going to do a little bit of a reminder here on some things that we implemented in this past October, because we continue to get some questions and we want to make sure that you have and are aware of precisely what we have done and what NSF's expectations are. If an organization discovers that a PI or co-PI on an active NSF award failed to disclose current support or in-kind contribution information as part of the proposal submission process, effective October 5th, 2020, the AOR has to submit this information to NSF. And it has 30 days of when you became aware of the failure to disclose to provide this information. How did we establish this requirement? We added a new term and condition entitled Post-Award Disclosure of Current Support and In-Kind Contribution Information. And again, this has been in effect since October 5th, 2020. After receiving this information, NSF has established a very, very well-established process that we have been using. And if necessary, we may consult with the AOR or designee, if it's necessary, to determine the impact of the new information on the NSF-funded grant and, where necessary, to take appropriate action. What kinds of questions are we thinking about or asking once we get one of these? Is based on this new information, does the individual have the capacity to continue to carry out the project as proposed? And is there any overlap or duplication with the newly funded NSF project? So very important information to relay and remind you of. Next slide, please. This information is identified in the term and condition itself. It describes precisely what you have to provide to us: PI or co-PI name, title, award number, source of support, primary place of performance, project start and end date, the total award amount, brief description of the major goals of the project, description of any overlap or duplication, impact of the ability of the PI or co-PI to carry out the award, and the person months or partial person months per year committed to the project for this newly disclosed project. This information, again, is vital to NSF in assessing any next steps that we need to do, or anything that needs to be done as a result of this new information. Next slide, please. As part of our comment process, we actually worked with the Federal Demonstration Partnership on development of this term and condition. And it was made very clear to us that the kinds of information that would be available for in-kind contributions is going to be very different than that for a project or a proposal or an award. And so we have streamlined this information and identified a different set of information that must be provided for in-kind contributions: PI, co-PI name, source of support, primary place of performance, a summary of the in-kind contributions, a description of any overlap or duplication of the project with the NSF award, impact of the ability of the PI or co-PI to carry out the NSF award, and then again, the person months as well committed to the project. And I think that this process that we've developed, the term and condition, has worked very well. We, again, as I've already mentioned, established internal guidance for NSF program officers who are the first ones to look at this and review this prior to sending it further through the process. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to talk about some changes that we also made in the past October to our annual and final project report templates. We have added 2 new pieces of information that I'd like to go over. Now, I'd also like to emphasize that our annual and final project reports is not an NSF only format. Rather, we are using the Research Performance Progress Report that was approved by the National Science and Technology Council. And so other agencies also have these same requirements. There may be some specific instructions that help clarify for a particular agency what it is that we intend. And that's what I'd like to go over now, because we have made some changes that I think will be very important to you. We tell that PIs and co-PIs have to indicate the percentage of the awards budget that was spent in a foreign country. We received a lot of questions. How do we do this calculation of the percentage of the awards budget? What do you want included in there? And so we recently implemented, at the end of August, new NSF specific instructions that directs awardees when developing the award budget percentage to only include 2 categories: consultant arrangements with foreign individuals and first-tier subawards to foreign organizations. No other budget category should be included. I should also note that when you are submitting a proposal and you have and want to include a foreign subaward or a consultant arrangement with a foreign individual, those are precisely the same categories. So we will be able to follow this from submission of the proposal through the project reporting process. PIs and co-PIs also must notify NSF when active other support has changed since the award was made or since the most recent annual report. You will, or your faculty will, continue to have to use an NSF approved format for current and pending support to notify NSF in their annual and final reports. Next slide, please. This just demonstrates for you, I'm a very visual learner, many of you are also, what exactly it looks like in the project reporting system. And the box highlighted in red indicates and asks the faculty, has there been a change to the active other support since the last reporting period? If the individual selects yes, you're going to be required to upload your most up-to-date current and pending support document. And again, it will have to be in an NSF approved format or the system will not let you submit it. Next slide, please. We do have some NSF specific help tabs. It states for NSF specific purposes. In the year 1 annual report, has there been a change in current other support since the award was made? For subsequent annual reports, has there been a change in current other support since the last reporting period? And we found that this has actually helped faculty understand where in the process they are and when and how this information should be provided. Next slide, please. There are some other significant PAP guide changes that I think would be very useful you to be aware of. The first is that we have added a new type of proposal, a planning proposal. This is a type of proposal used to support initial conceptualization, planning, and collaboration activities that aim to formulate new and sound plans for large-scale projects and emerging research areas for future submission to an NSF program. Like a number of our other types of proposals, the PI must contact the appropriate NSF PO prior to submission. They will give you an email that your faculty will have to upload when they're preparing this planning proposal. Requests may be up to $100,000 per year for up to 2 years. And unlike many of our others, since this is a new proposal type, we are only developing it in research.gov. So beginning October 4th, the proposal has to be, a planning proposal would have to be submitted in research.gov. We have also added a new certification requirement for travel proposals. Now, as you'll recall, we have added in past PAP guides language regarding regarding our expectations on conference proposals. And we indicate that it's our expectation that you have a code of conduct or a policy for sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, or sexual assault, and it establishes other expectations as well. We have decided that it's so important to us that we want to ensure that any travel that we support to a conference is to a conference that has that same requirement in place, meaning it already has a policy or code of conduct regarding sexual harassment, other forms of harassment, or sexual assault. And so that is a new requirement that will take place with this PAP guide. Next slide, please. We are adding a new type of supplemental funding requests, career life balance supplements, and we're adding it as a new proposal type. I really would like to emphasize, though, that the concept of a career life balance supplement is not new at NSF. In fact, we've issued multiple Dear Colleague letters reminding faculty or reminding institutions of the availability of these supplements. But with Dear Colleague letters, they're sometimes forgotten over time. This is so important to us that we've added it as a standing supplemental funding type in the PAP guide. It's available for research award recipients, postdoctoral fellows, and graduate research fellowship awardees. It has to be submitted as a supplemental funding request function in FastLane. Within the PAP guide, there are very specific preparation instructions. And so I strongly encourage you, prior to preparing one of these, to read the PAP guide coverage, because it's very precise in its language on what we expect for you to include when you submit one of these in FastLane. Another change is a change that resulted from 2 CFR 200, which specified that grantees must submit all required reports within 1 year of the period of performance end date. Non-compliance, if you do not submit any of the required reports within 1 year, we are going to have to report that to the Federal Awardee Performance and Integrity Information System, that many of you know as FAPIS. This is something that did have a great deal of discussion when 2 CFR was being revised. And the expectation was that these reports are so indeed important to the federal agencies that reporting in FAPIS was indeed a necessary step. We also, in the PAP guide, have increased greatly the visibility of research.gov. Terminology and links in various sections have been added to align with NSF's goals. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit more. Next slide, please. So now that's the perfect timing to talk more about proposal submission modernization. We include this in every update session that we provide. What is so exciting about what's in this part of the presentation, though, is how much has changed and how much has been added to research.gov, and I'm about to walk through that now. We put out an important notice, number 147, at the end of September in 2020, which talked about the proactive steps that NSF is taking to incrementally move preparation and submission of all proposals from Fastlane to research.gov. Yes, before the question is asked, grants.gov will continue to be a viable proposal preparation option for you. Fastlane is targeted to be removed as a submission option from all funding opportunities by December 31st, 2022. When I gave a speech recently, I provided the numbers that we were seeing in terms of usage of research.gov to prepare proposals. And while those numbers have continued to rise, they are not where they need to be, folks. And so we are using this part of the presentation to strongly encourage you, to encourage your faculty to begin using research.gov to submit those proposals. We also want to remind you that program descriptions are supported in research.gov, and the funding opportunities themselves will clearly specify whether submission via research.gov is required or available for your use. Next slide, please. This is the slide where I really did want to emphasize how much things have changed. If you look at this current capabilities column on the left, you will see so much has been added. Proposal types. We have done all of the research proposal types. We've done rapid, eager, raise, facilitation awards for scientists and engineers with disabilities. We call them FACED. You can do equipment, you can do travel, you can do conference, you can do ideas labs. A few of these were just added in August of 2021. Submission types, preliminary proposals. Right now, have been added, but right now it's limited to ideas lab only. Renewal proposals was just added in August of 2021, and accomplishment-based renewal proposals was just added. We've also just added in March of 2021, the ability to withdraw both single and separately submitted collaborative proposals. And we continue to focus on adding new training vehicles. The demo site that came out in October of 2020. Topic-specific how-to guides, proposal preparation demo videos. All of these are to help you and your faculty get ready for this transition, which is coming. In the middle column, we talk about what's coming next. We have 2 new proposal types that will be coming in October 2021. I've already talked about planning proposals, but we will have the grant opportunities for academic liaison with industry. Those we call goalie proposals. Those also will be available in October. Submission types. You will be able to submit letters of intent beginning in October. Preliminary proposals, again, these are the non-ideas labs. What we're targeting for those is winter of 2022. And for full proposals related to a preliminary proposal, we are targeting winter of 2022 as well. Solicitation specific requirements. Many of you who deal with our Education and Human Resource Directorate know that they have a project data form that must be submitted. We are targeting winter of 2022 for that, and additional training options also we continue in the future to provide as well. Future capabilities, SBIR, STTR, centers, research infrastructures, fellowships. We do not have specific dates for those at this time. Solicitation specific requirement, additional specified forms or documents, and approved deviations from the PAC guide. In particular, project descriptions exceeding 15 pages. That is the most specific deviation from the PAC guide that we see in solicitations. And that's a future capability we're working to achieve as well. And then finally, post-award actions, supplemental funding request, including career life balance supplemental funding requests. Right now, as I mentioned in a prior slide, your CLB have to be done in FastLane. All supplemental funding requests currently have to be done in FastLane, but we are working toward making that functionality available in the future. Next slide, please. This is a recent enhancement to our proposal preparation landing page. Effective August 30th, this page became available and was enabled to accommodate new submission types in research.gov and in the research.gov demo site. So you'll see in that highlighted box in red that it now allows you to look at the various types that of submissions that you can now submit via RGov. And also, it also effective August 30th, preliminary proposals was enabled in research.gov, and we've made that clear on this screen as well. Next slide, please. Upcoming research.gov proposal enhancements to the proposal preparation landing page. Beginning October 4th, program solicitations with required letters of intent will be able to be submitted in research.gov. The letter of intent setup wizard contains 3 steps: funding opportunity, where to apply, and the letter of intent details. Step 1 of the letter of intent setup wizard lists only the funding opportunities that require or accept letters of intent. When a letter of intent is initiated by a sponsored projects office or an authorized organizational representative, they will be prompted with a blue information message indicating that a PI is required to be included before the letter of intent is submitted. Letter of intent will also be added as a drop-down option in the in progress and submitted and updates tiles on the proposal preparation landing page. Again, we are trying to make these pages as user-friendly and as intuitive as possible so that you will find it a very easy system for you to use. Next slide, please. Upcoming research.gov proposal enhancements, proposal types, effective October 4th, the following new full proposal types and associated automated compliance checks will be enabled in the research.gov and in the demo site. Goalie in planning proposals, again, it will let you know. And again, the important part is that the associated compliance checks will also be there. There are limitations in terms of the amounts of money for planning proposals, as well as duration, and it will check for those. And if you exceed those, it will not allow the proposals to be submitted. We also will have a note on the bottom about the CLB supplemental funding request has been added. And we just really, again, want to emphasize how we are trying to make these screens in research.gov as useful and easy to use as possible. Next slide. We always want to emphasize our demo site because it can be used to really explore the preparation of proposals, and to check the compliance of uploaded proposal documents. In the system, all demo site users are automatically given the PI role for demo site purposes in order to perform the actual proposal preparation functions that a PI can do in the actual system. Obviously, you will not be able to submit. The proposal submission capability has been disabled. There is also demo site FAQs on the research.gov about proposal preparation page for information on demo site access and features. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go into all of these, but I just want to emphasize that we continue to develop resources for the research community on ARGov because, again, we are moving towards a situation where we're seeing dates now, folks, when FastLane will no longer be available for use as a proposal submission vehicle. So the more information, the more resources we can provide, we hope will push you to begin using research.gov now. Next slide. This is a slide that we wish we didn't have to have, but given the number of natural disasters we see, we felt it important to remind you what our policy is regarding natural disasters. NSF's policy allows for flexibility in meeting deadline dates due to a natural disaster or anthropogenic event. All the information that you need is in the PAP guide. We continue with every event that occurs. Folks say, we need an extension. We've experienced a flood, mudslide, you name it, of natural disaster. All of the information that you need is specified in the deadline date section of the PAP guide. Proposers should contact the cognizant NSF program officer in the division or office where they intend to submit their proposal and request authorization to submit after the deadline date. Folks, we are different than other agencies. Some agencies, you can submit one list. At NSF, the program officer is the individual that guides that proposal through the entire process. And so it is vital that they be contacted to let them know that this situation has occurred. A statement identifying the nature of the event that impacted the ability to submit the proposal on time will need to be uploaded under nature of natural or anthropogenic event in the single copy document section of FastLane or ARGov. And rapid proposals may be, we're getting lots of questions. Okay, we've just had a hurricane. Do you accept rapid proposals? Rapid proposals should be submitted in accordance with NSF policies. And we remind you of the PAP guide section, chapter 1F, that goes through all of the details that I have just gone through. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention.
Okay, we're going to come back and we have a little bit of time for a few questions. My colleagues have all been furiously typing away answers in the Q&A, so we've answered a lot of your questions, and we have a little bit of time for a couple of questions here. So, Jean, the first one that I'd like to ask is on indirect cost rates. Can you clarify, is the indirect cost rate on an award the rate used at the time of proposal or the time of award?
Thanks for asking that question, Jeremy. I do understand that this question was also asked as part of the award and administration session yesterday. And it really can get a bit complicated because it depends on specific details. So I'm going to try to parse this question into pieces to help provide greater clarity. So the first and most essential point is for institutions of higher education, obviously per 2 CFR 200, the negotiated indirect cost rate, NICRA, in effect at the time of the initial award must remain in effect throughout the life of the NSF award. Okay, I think you all got that piece. But then we have some variances with that I think are worth going through. So per OMB though, if the rate that is used in the proposal is lower than the rate in effect at the time of the award, the grantee may charge less than the full negotiated rate. That is authorized by OMB. And that under recovery is considered voluntary uncommitted cost sharing. Proposers, grantees, though, are strongly encouraged to have or to establish an internal control process that ensures that the rates proposed are not greater than those in the approved NICRA at the time of the award, because that's going to avoid overcharging indirect costs under NSF awards. And any overcharging identified under an NSF award, an audit, site visit, et cetera, they're definitely going to be disallowed and they will definitely require repayment. Proposing organizations that are other than institutions of higher education, however, may charge indirect cost rates based on newly negotiated rates in effect at the time the costs are incurred, provided that this will not affect the scope, increase award costs, decrease the period of support, or otherwise be inconsistent with the indirect cost rate provisions of the award. So again, focusing heavily on the issues that have been occurring in this space are those that have been using rates in excess of what was in effect at the time of the award. So I hope that that provides more clarity on that particular issue, because like I said, depending on where in the space of the process you are, it can get complicated.
Great, thank you. During the proposal preparation session, we talked about synergistic activities, and we continue to get questions about synergistic activities in the biographical sketch. So the question that we have here is it better to simply list the activity, or should the proposer provide more context that's included around the activity to help explain the importance of it, or would that be considered adding additional information that NSF might not want to see?
Again, another great question, and we did talk about that as part of our proposal preparation session. Let me emphasize the most important point that I want to make about synergistic activities in general and about the bio sketch in general is to think back to what I said about what the purpose of the biographical sketch is. It is in place to demonstrate whether the individual or team has the necessary qualifications to carry out the research as proposed. So folks are asking us in proposal preparation, which are the best ones to use? Well, no, you have to tell us which are the best ones to demonstrate which show the qualifications you have to carry out the research as proposed. When we're talking about going into a lot of detail, or is it better to be precise, we tell you 5 distinct examples. This isn't supposed to be a piece that goes and actually supplements the project description. I'm not saying you can't use a few extra words, but the bottom line is what you are intending to do is provide examples that a reviewer or an NSF program officer can look at and say, yes, that particular example helps demonstrate that they have the necessary qualifications.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And so is NSF planning to consider making the NSF biographical sketch compatible with the NIH biosketch in the future?
Are you serious, Jeremy? You're going to ask me that? I could spend probably 2 hours on that issue. What I will
You've got
say,
a minute.
I got a minute. What I will say to you is that NSF and NIH have been working together. If you would look over the last few years, the biographical sketches and current and pending support, although they call it other support, we have been trying our hardest to get closer and closer. Now, there are things that they feel they need that they may call something a little different, or they may have a category of a personal statement, for example, that they use, that NSF considered it, but made an assessment that that's not something that we perhaps need. Same for us in synergistic activities. But if you look closely at our formats that are now going to be available out there in Science CV, I think you will see that the agencies are working very hard to the extent possible to be as consistent and as harmonized as possible.
Thank you. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I want to thank Jean and our policy office team, including Samantha Hunter and Beth Strausser, who have been answering your questions.
Thanks to Beth and Sam and Jeremy for very much helping out with this session. Very much appreciated.
And tomorrow we'll begin with sessions covering the programs in the NSF directorates. We'll be covering the biological sciences, social, behavioral, and economic sciences, education and human resources, and computer and information science and engineering. Thank you, everyone, and be well.
Be safe, everyone. Take care.